When it comes to working with sellers, the name of the game is definitely preparation, and that's twofold. One is to be prepared as you're meeting with the seller. That's the professional presentation you go on to meet with the seller in their home, to be totally prepared for that. And then secondly, after you've been hired, is to totally prepare their home for the successful sale. So we need to be prepared in both regards, and we're going to talk about both of those things. Let's begin by talking about being prepared for that listing presentation, or that time when a seller has you over to their home so you can meet together to talk about their sale. It's kind of interesting the way sellers will voice their desire to sell their house, or they know they're ready to sell, but it's just funny that they kind of don't know what comes next. And I think even on that very initial conversation, when a person says, hey, I'm thinking about selling my house, but I don't know what happens next, we should be able to skillfully take over and even guide them through just the discussion that should be had as you're determining if you're ready to have an agent come meet with you. So all I need to know or hear is, we're thinking of selling our house. And that's what someone says, and then they kind of fumble around saying, I think, maybe are you coming over to look at our house and give us some ideas? I don't like to watch a seller struggle through that conversation. We should be prepared to lead that conversation. So I just need to know desire to sell, and I can jump in. And so what I will tell to a seller in person or over the phone is that I've learned that at this exact juncture, when you're considering selling your house, what's most helpful to you is by having all the best information to help you make a decision. And that involves several things. One, it's for me, of course, to come to the house, and then I can meet you for the first time and see the home. But the information that is going to be most helpful to you is, what is your home worth, conservatively and transparently and based on evidence. I always tell them this has nothing to do with my opinion, and frankly, my opinion has little value. The professional competency I will use to find comparable sales, use numbers. I'm kind of a numbers nerd, using data and facts and figures to have an open conversation where we can, prove to ourselves what your home is worth based on evidence. That's really important. So I'll be doing the homework before we meet together. I'll bring it to you, and then I will not tell you what your home is worth. I will show you, and we'll have that conversation. So that's one piece, establish value. The second piece of information that will be helpful to you is, what do I have to do to my home or not need to do to my home to help it be worth this, range of values that we've established. There's always going to be some things the seller needs to do to prepare their home so that it's most sellable, but oftentimes there are things they definitely do not need to do that they feel is so necessary. And it's pretty regularly I'm talking a seller out of doing things that they think they need to do, but they really don't. A funny one several years ago was the seller who said, we always wanted to put up crown molding in our basement of our Bennington split entry. We just thought that always looked so nice, and we haven't done it yet, and I'd like to get it done before we list, and it'll take several weekends, because we got kids' games and things. I said, please don't put up the crown molding. A buyer's going to be none the wiser. You once thought about it, and then you didn't. It's not going to change the sales price. You're going to burn 3 weekends, miss 5 kids' soccer games. It will probably be frustrating for you, and it's not going to help the sale of your home. So we'll have an open conversation about things to do and things that aren't necessary to do to prepare your home for sale. And the third piece of information that would be helpful to you is as you're evaluating realtors, you want to know, how will I serve you? What is my marketing plan? What are the things that I do to take care of your family? We'll talk a little bit about sales stats to establish some professional competency. And then, of course, in our conversation, we'll cover, timing and when we should be listing, the process, all the steps involved. So I'll tell the seller those are the things that I find most sellers are ready to hear. Would that information be helpful to you? And almost always they say yes. They don't even really realize those are all the things they need. They just know, I want to sell my house. So hear that, take over, guide them through. Here's what will be helpful to you. Value, work to do, how I'll serve you, timing and the process. That's just a very skilled conversation you should be having, and probably will set you apart from the agent who just says, when can I come over? They may be doing the same things, but that other agent is maybe not preparing the sellers, talking them through what you will talk them through when you arrive. So that's the big piece, or the first piece is just to have that skilled initial conversation. As I'm doing my homework, I told them I'm going to do my homework so that I can come over it and show that to them instead of tell them. I do want to be most prepared, and I want to have the best amount of information. If I have the best information, then the seller will be given the best information. So as a part of my, prior to that appointment is I want to have sometimes a separate, but sometimes in the same phone call, a little bit of a seller interview, because I want to gather, again, the best information so I can give them the best information. So sometimes on that short call, I'll say, I'm going to begin my homework. Again, all the homework I need to do, I'll bring it to you. And as I'm doing that, I will likely have some questions for you. There's some information about your home I can generate from public records, a past sale. There's some things, I won't know until we talk. You've owned your home for 3 decades. So as I get going on my homework, we may talk again. Is it okay if I call? So sometimes this kind of pre-appointment seller interview, I'll push off until I get my homework started. Sometimes you just capture them. You're at your desk. You have the 30 minutes to listen and take notes. And so I'll have after that short introduction of what will happen when I come to their home, I'll tell them, hey, since I have you, can I ask you some, a few specific questions that are important to me. So the information I want to know before going to the seller's house, I'll tell you all of those things. Some of that comes out very naturally before I'm even asking some of this. The seller's already telling me. So we'll go through, what I want to know, and it's not always me berating them with questions. Sometimes they just spill some of this just in our conversation. So I want to know, how long have they been thinking of selling? Some people tend to be, hobby sellers that have their home for sale every summer for a few years and it hasn't sold successfully. That's pretty uncommon, but I don't generally want to help a hobby seller. I want to have I work with a family who's ready, willing, and able to sell and maybe go on to buy. So just kind of like measuring their motivation a little. How long have you been thinking about selling? Most people come right out and say, we're ready to move, we're moving away, we're getting a job transfer, we need to sell our house. So just a little bit of timing. I almost don't have to ask, they'll tell me that stuff right away. If I'm captured, without ever looking up their home, they call me, we start talking. Obviously I can look up some of this next information, but if it's conversational and the flow of the conversation is nice, I'll just say, I haven't looked up your home at all. How long have you owned it? What did you buy it for? Very basic information, but if I capture them and I haven't looked at the house, I just want to converse about some of those things. I will ask them what enhancements or improvements, upgrades, any of those 3 words that you've made since you've owned the house, any major repairs you've made. And so people are a little prepared to start to tell you these things, but it's funny. Some people will say, we've done kind of nothing, maybe a little paint. And it's like, okay, no problem. The reason I'm asking is I just want to be able to, factor in any of those improvements you've made as I'm doing my homework. So they tell you like they've done next to nothing because you catch them on the spot. They can't recall those things. Well, you get to the house and then it's like, hey, we thought about all these things we did, and it's new bathrooms and kitchens, and it's just funny what sellers don't recognize that they've done until they're walking you through their house. But I try to pull out as much of that information as possible because, again, I want to, as I'm doing my homework, compare their home to other recent sales, and the condition of their home obviously needs to match the condition of others. Are they highly upgraded or improved, or are they not? Sometimes the word enhancements, I don't know, it just kind of strikes people in a funny way where it maybe jogs their memory a little more. When I ask about major repairs that they've made, like roof, furnace, AC, sometimes that just gets them thinking, oh yeah, we did do the roof, and because we had a leak, we ended up, doing a few things in the bathroom. So they're talking, I'm listening, I'm taking notes. I want them to tell me all about their house. Another good way to ask that question is, tell me what you love about your house, or when you saw it for the first time, what did you love about it? That kind of gets them talking on maybe not improvements, but the things that are really great, the layout and how functional it is, with maybe it's an older floor plan, but it's connected to the laundry room from the master bedroom, and that was an early version of that floor plan, whatever. I think it gets them talking, and it's a nice way to gather some information for down the road when we're writing the public description, the remarks about the property, while we can steal all the things that they love about their house. Writing those public remarks is not my favorite task, but if I can take the information that they told me why they love their house, then that makes it a lot easier. Another question I will ask over the phone is, pardon me, I presume you're interviewing several realtors, or have you thought about how you'll be evaluating realtors? I do want to know going into it, am I going up against no competition, or are you interviewing a few realtors? Not that it will change my approach, but I want to know kind of what I'm walking into. Some people are real upfront about telling you that. Others are kind of sheepish to admit they're interviewing other agents. It's absolutely okay if they do. I think it's totally fair. Us as realtors, when we're going to have projects done or spend amounts of money, we'll ask 2 contractors for bids. I think it's only fair that we allow or accept a seller doing the same thing. Some agents, when they know they're interviewing other realtors, like to kind of pry and ask who you're meeting with. They're trying to get the names of the other realtors they're interviewing. I don't like that idea. I just don't do that, frankly. I don't want to get consumed with who this other realtor is. I want to be consumed with how I'm going to help you and your family, and if I can speak to that, I think that's more important than knowing who my competition is. And I think the reason agents want to know who their competition is, you go back to your office, you look up your sales stats, their sales stats, and then, try to slyly underhand or introduce the idea that, well, you're just a better agent than this other person. Or comments like, hey, they do a lot of business. I run into them when I'm working out west, but I haven't seen them in Midtown very often. I didn't know they were in Midtown anymore. To me, that's just a little underhanded. What you do with the seller, I think, is the only thing you need to focus on. Let the other realtor do that. And so I don't want to know my competition. I don't even want to be tempted to compare myself to what a different agent is doing, because at the end, it doesn't matter. What matters is me and how I'll serve the seller. But I do want to know if I'm competing against other realtors. And most people are interviewing several, as they should. So a good follow-up question is, since you're interviewing several realtors, may I ask, what's going to make the difference in who you hire, or what's important in the realtor you hire, or, I want to meet your exact expectations and serve you and your family well. So tell me how that will look. What do you expect of the realtor you hire? I like that. What do you expect of the real estate agent that you hire? Because as they are telling you, well, we want someone who's good and communicative and knows the market, and you're taking notes, and as they pause, you could say, that's great, and what else? And you're sort of drawing it out of them with the, and what else? And what else? Because really, I want to know exactly how they expect to be served, lest I tweak my approach just slightly to meet that need. For example, a person might say, we're totally nervous and scared, we want our hands held, we want to talk all the time. I can do that for a person. Others will say, I'm a numbers nerd, I just want to talk evidence, you're the professional, we're going to make our decision, and we're going to turn it over to you. We've done this before, we trust you, just, we don't need to talk all the time, just sell our house. They're looking more for a result and not a feeling, and so that's okay too. So I just might cater the conversation when we get together at the house for those personalities. So that is why I asked that question. The last question a lot of realtors will ask a seller in this kind of pre-appointment phone interview, which I don't ask this question, but many do. Agents will ask, can I ask, how much you owe on your house? Because I'm going to do a, net sheet that tells you what you stand to make from the sale of your home, and then minus what you owe, and that will be what your, what your proceeds are. I tried that early on, and I found, one, it doesn't really matter. It's not really my business. They're not that excited to tell me those things. They've never met me or even seen my face, and I'm a voice on the phone asking them what they owe on their mortgage. To me, that's just pushing a little too hard, so I won't ask that. I will do a estimated proceeds sheet for them at the house, or I'll bring it, and it's really easy to say, if we sell at this price, which is what the evidence supports, you will stand to make, this is your sales price, here's all the costs involved. Basically, here's the number, but it's minus what you owe. So I don't need to know what they owe. It's real easy for them to say 150 minus we owe 100 on our house. Okay, so you're gonna get $100,000 or $50,000. So they can do the mental math. I just don't want to push for that information. So that's all the information I need to be most prepared before meeting together. And then the other thing I will sometimes do, and I haven't done it really for 6 months because of COVID things, is I will tell them I have a packet of information for them I'd like to drop off, or have my assistant drop off. I can put it between your front door and storm door. Just has some helpful information about me, talks a little bit about the sales process. It's just something for you to flip through, before we meet together. Do you mind if I drop it by tomorrow before our meeting in a few days from now? And the point is that you're dropping something off, the other realtor isn't. It's, professionally put together, something to read about you. I haven't done that almost at all this year, and it has not hurt my business at all. Partially, I just think early on to give someone something all my hands touched and let them bring it into their house has not been, I just don't think that was the right maneuver. Sometimes I will email a PDF of all of that, but I've not told them I'm bringing this in advance or send it. I will bring it when we do meet together, and I leave it at the house, and that's been totally great enough. So I may maintain that strategy, which is I bring it and I leave it, or I email it, or maybe once all health concerns go away, might return to delivering it before we meet together. That conversation with the seller leading up to meeting together allows me to be most prepared before that meeting, but then I need to go prepare myself for that meeting. And so I am preparing a market analysis, finding comparable sales, in the whole discussion of how to do a CMA and all the data and stuff is probably a different conversation to really fine tune how to properly find comparable sales and things. But quickly, you're finding homes that are like theirs in the same location, style, size, condition. You hone those down to the ones that appear to be most similar, package it however you want, and I'm bringing that to the sellers. So we won't go into that level of detail now, but you've told them you're going to be prepared, you're going to do the homework, bring them the homework, so you do need to bring the homework. Let's talk about that appointment in their house, because that's when I am telling them, the sellers, what I'll do to prepare their home for sale, and I'll use kind of this dialogue I'll use with them to talk with you guys about how you should be preparing a seller's home. So you obviously arrive at their house, you arrive on time, take off your shoes. Even if they say don't, take off their shoes. Their dogs come running up to you. I sincerely do love dogs, but even if you don't, I would still pet their dogs. And I would remove your shoes. I would not park in their driveway. I always park in the street. Even if they say you should have parked in the driveway, leave your shoes on, I'll say, well, I just always want to respect another person's property, and you have a lovely home. So I think that's just mannerly. You'll be guided to the table. Every agent has a different methodology. Do we talk a bit, then tour, then talk more? They're kind of waiting for our cue. They've never had a realtor come to their home, so we should, again, even be guiding this experience. So I'll say, hey, where can I put my bag down? It'll be the place we'll end up sitting and talking for most of this time. But before we sit and talk, will you give me a tour of your house? I just want to see everything for the first time. As we're walking through, tell me about improvements you've made, little projects you think you need to do, please point them out, and we can have a conversation about those. I take notes. Even if it's sparse notes, I think it demonstrates a level of care that you are taking notes about their house. I'll say these notes might be pretty sparse. When it is time to be listed, there needs to be more accurate note-taking, measurements and things. We'll take care of those another time. I'm just going to take a few notes to myself. They lead you through the house. Home tours take a really long time. I wish you could somehow get it done in 10 minutes. Sometimes it takes 50 minutes and you haven't even sat down to talk. But they want to tell you things. You're building some rapport. I mean, there's a lot of relationship being built as you're touring their home, complimenting the things you're doing, giving your feedback on, I would do touch-up painting here. I wouldn't worry about repainting your whole ceiling because your kid flicked a little piece of paint up on the ceiling that doesn't match. I don't think you need to mess with that. Hey, I don't know if I'd replace the carpet yet. I know you want to, but I think you might get it cleaned and it'll be just good enough for the sale. So you're talking about those things. Ultimately, you come back to the table, and I think this is really where you are going to win them over, if you haven't yet, with the conversation over the phone and talking about meeting their expectations. I mean, really, the sitting down might be, that's how they're evaluating the realtors. We can all tour and take notes, all propose to do homework. but it's this conversation, that's kind of the critical mass. I begin that conversation with saying the same general thing, and it really starts by saying, hey, before I dive in to all the things we want to talk about, it's really important that I just say a few things to you that I tell every seller at the very beginning. It's important, for you to hear this from me. It sort of sets the tone, like, serious and listen up. And I'll tell them, first, I totally appreciate you letting me be here. There's a ton of agents to choose from, and so I sincerely appreciate the opportunity. Thanks for having me, giving up dinner time and family time. I really am grateful that they would consider me to be a professional worth hiring. So I always start with that. I tell them, almost verbatim, in my experience, when a person is selling their house, especially for the very first time like you guys are, it comes with a wild mix of emotions and worries and anxieties, and I've come to expect that. But if I can request one thing of you, please, it's that you keep your worries to a minimum. It's my responsibility, privilege to handle all of these details for you. So please, to go back to, if I can say it again, I want you to keep your worries to a minimum and let me take care of those things. As we go through this process, you'll have many, many questions, and that's okay. No question will be too large or will be too small. If you ask me a question and I don't know the answer, I'm confident we can find that answer together. During this conversation and as we're working together, if we're able to, I will give you a lot of guidance and counsel. I want you to know that it's always based on best practices, successful past experiences, and always with your best interest in mind. This is not guesswork. I'm very thankful to sell, probably greater than my fair share of real estate. So when I'm giving you advice, it's always based on this is the best way to handle these things. This is how it's been successful in the past. And of course, it's always with, your best interest. I think that kind of conversation just establishes I'm going to care about you. I have the character to treat you right. I'm about to go through my professional competency. I want to do this earnestly. I want to take care of your family. Sometimes I think they've hired me just because of that conversation, because I take a few minutes to say that very important message to them. And I think a lot of realtors just launch into their presentation. And I always want to take the time to start that way, even if it's a client that it feels funny, like, boy, they're the more numbers nerds. They're not going to, care about the touchy-feely. I do want them to hear that sincere message from me. And there's been times I've talked myself out of it. And funny enough, those are the times that I've not been hired. And so I really think there's some value in establishing that idea of how I'm going to serve you and care for you, put your needs ahead of my own. So I always start that way. I bring with me my marketing plan. It's my pre-listing booklet, a packet. It has a lot of information. I'll tell them I'm going to leave this here for you tonight. There's a ton of help for reading. I will not go through it word for word, but I am going to highlight a few things, and that begins with my marketing plan. I'm a big believer in preparation, and that's not to be so eager or excited or desperate sometimes to put a home for sale before it's ready, and also to make sure a seller is not too eager, excited, or desperate to put their home up for sale before it makes the most amount of money. And some agents might be so eager they list your house tomorrow, but we know your home isn't ready to sell for the most amount of monies tomorrow, and so we want to take some time to do the things necessary so that it is most sellable. So here's in the name of preparation, there's a few things that are most important. A pre-inspection, it's a full home inspection conducted before the house ever goes for sale, and I'll rattle on the values real quick, or the value of this real quickly. Make sure there's no surprises, nothing too scary. If we know what's wrong, we can make a plan to fix it. It's better if you're fixing it on your time and dime than doing it if the buyer dictates it and the costs go up. It makes your home more marketable to say that it's pre-inspected. It helps a lot with negotiations. We can often use the pre-inspection to encourage a buyer not to have their own home inspection or limit the scope of their inspection. It just makes a buyer feel very comfortable with your house to know a professional has gone through the house. It's like a report card for how good your house really is, 25 pages with pictures by a reputable local inspector, and it's even valuable to the buyer's agent who wants to make sure the buyers are buying a good home and that the sale is going to stick together. I do pay for a pre-inspection for all the listings that I have, so that's the quick version, but I talk about the need for a pre-inspection. I talk about staging, that's to make the house look its very best. The pre-inspection is based on performance, This is based on how pretty the house is, that it looks its best. I'll pay a staging consultant to come through, go room by room, make some notes and some recommendations, never requirements, but things that will make each space look the very best. After you tell me the house is looking its very best with some staging recommendations, clearing out items, the touch-up painting, cleaning the carpet, you let me know. Then a professional photographer will come through and take high-definition photos, ample photos of all the spaces. I also am a big believer of a Matterport tour. It's like a virtual tour. Think Google Street View, but that's pretty archaic. It allows a buyer the ability to see kind of every nook and cranny of your house. The real value of that is not the COVID response to keep people out of your home. I think the real value is we make the buyer pool huge for your home. If a family who's relocating, or a military family, and it happens all the time, they're having to pick a house without ever being here, which can be kind of a scary or uncomfortable way to purchase a home, even if you've done it before. Well, with the pre-inspection, they know everything right and wrong with the house. We've even made notes about the things that were fixed, so they'll know exactly the condition of the house. With the Matterport tour, they can go through every room, step by step, and know what everything feels like. It's really a pretty nice gift to a buyer to give them that level of information about your home. That alone makes your home better than your neighbor's who doesn't have a pre-inspection, doesn't have Matterport tour, maybe has crummy photos. I want a person to be able to sit on their sofa 9 states away with their family and very comfortably pick your house and become a very viable buyer for your house. Well, that makes our buyer pool huge, where most homes are only accessible to the people who can drive and go look at it. So that's real important. Once the house is listed, it will go on the MLS, will go on everyone's favorite real estate website. Every buyer has a favorite place they look. The home will be everywhere, and that includes social media. Always ask, does that make sense? Pre-inspection, you like all those ideas, and they do. Because really, and this is just agent conversation, the preparation is important. We do want to slow down, give them the advice that they need to make their house most sellable, so that they do make the most amount of money and have the best terms and conditions. So that marketing plan is totally based on best practices. I've done it for a long time, and I know the result of this marketing plan is higher sales prices, quicker sales, cleaner contracts, less things that the buyer is asking of the seller because the seller's already done them. So I do want to be prepared, and I do want to prepare their home. Ultimately, it makes it the best experience for them and me and our time together, and that's what I want at the end of this all. As I continue through the listing presentation, I say, well, that's the preparing your home for sale part, and then as your home is for sale, I make the same commitment to everyone, which is we can't stop talking, or we shouldn't stop talking. We can't be talking enough through this process. We always are going to be in communication about what's going on. That means after each showing, one, you'll know when showings are going to be. There'll be no surprise showings. You'll approve all of them. You'll expect feedback. I'll call every agent. I will gather that feedback. I'll always share it with you. Good or bad or indifferent, I want us always to have a conversation about what did real live buyers with real live money and motivation think about your house. That's what's most important. My opinion, little value. Other agent opinion, some value. Real buyers, that is what's most important. I'll always pull that out of the buyer's agent, and I'll always share that for you. So we'll always be talking about that. And then I'm always surveying the neighborhood, updating, refreshing my homework as the home is listed. So if things are listed that are competing with yours, we'll talk about it. If a whole bunch sold over the weekend but not yours, we'll want to talk about maybe why that is. So I'll always be the real estate expert, but I encourage you to be the real estate expert as well, which means I'll always keep you informed. I'll skip a lot of pages in this pre-listing packet. It's tips for cleaning your home, talks more about pre-inspection, talks more about staging, advice for decluttering your home. Again, it's just professional guidance, but they can read it for themselves. There's a list of contractors if they need people after the pre-inspection. There's utility information, because ultimately they'll switch utilities out of their name close to the day of closing. There's a moving checklist, so they remember to tell doctors and dentists and Amazon and whoever else that they're going to move or have moved, so they get their mail on time. So that's all in there. I do always stop and talk about there's a page that talks about my sales stats for over the last year. It's number of units I've sold in a year or number of families I've helped, and I will compare that to average. Last year I sold 77. This year I've sold 98. Most agents do less than 10 houses a year. So I want you to know it's my full-time, all-day, everyday job. So I'll tell them that. We'll talk about days on market. You know, the market itself is averaging like 25 to 30 days, which is great. Over the same time period, I averaged about a week. I talk about that when most people are ready to sell, they really want to stop putting money here and start putting money elsewhere. And the more days it takes to be putting money here by way of taxes and payment and utility bills and maintenance costs, there is some value in you selling your home relatively swiftly. But then I tell them I don't think days on market is the most important statistic. A lot of agents will really hang their hat on 2-hour, 4-hour sales, sold it in secret before it went on the market because I brought in my own private buyer or the private buyer of my best buddy agent. I want to make sure the seller makes the most amount of money, and to sell your home in secrecy in the first hour maybe means that you don't. So I don't think days on market is the end-all be-all stat that some agents make it out to be. So then I talk about list price to sale price ratio. What is the home listed at? And then traditionally what do homes sell at, which is always under list price, very traditionally. Well, my listings sell for at list price or sometimes greater, so if I can sell a house for 1% or 2% greater than average, it's real money in a seller's pocket, and that's what's important. So I just quickly talk about those things. I try hard not to drone on about those sales stats because I've learned whether 98 houses or 28 houses, a seller feels like you're competent because you're there being a professional, you've sold real estate, and so to lean so heavily on those stats is not what's most important. I think it's the connection and the feeling and the way you're going to serve them. And so I've lost a few this year leaning on stats because I finally had some what felt like impressive stats to use. I was losing, and it's because I forgot all about the beginning, the introduction. I'll care about you, guide you, take care of your needs, your interest ahead of my own. Don't worry about a thing, I'll handle all those things. So, but it is important to give some professional metrics. In that packet is also some info about me, some testimonials from clients, and then blank copies of all the listing agreement paperwork. I just flip through that. I tell them these are blank copies. This is an interview appointment, by no way a signing appointment, but I just want people to know, what paperwork is involved with listing a house. Of course, through this conversation, I'm pausing many times to ask them questions. If we haven't had any yet, I'll ask them again, do you have any questions? And then once we've gone through all of that, then we'll go through the market analysis. I'll walk them through the homework that I did. This is a whole nother detailed conversation about, again, preparing the CMA and how to exactly go through it, pulling out the comps. We review all of that in great detail, establish a range of values the house will sell for, and then I'll pull out an estimated proceeds sheet and say, hey, I put together a few estimated proceeds sheets of what you stand to make if your home sells in this range of values, and I might even pick the most conservative one, the bottom number, and say if your house sells at this, and here's all the expenses, title fees, and title insurance, and a transaction fee to Better Homes and Gardens, listing commission at this %, you'll stand to make whatever this number is minus what you owe. So think about the balance you had on your last statement and subtract that from this number, and that's what you stand to make. On the day of closing, the title company will pay off your home for you. You don't have to worry about that. They'll handle that for you, and then they'll give you, or you'll get a proceeds check for this amount of money. And sometimes the important question is that enough? Is that more or less than you thought? Does this allow you to do what you want to do next? Because if they say, oh, we actually are barely going to break even, we've only owned it a short time, that's all okay. I just rather we have that conversation now. Even if we just spend an hour and a half in their home determining that, I've been able to prove my skill and competency and character. And even if the math doesn't work out today, when the math finally does, I think they'll be ready to hire me. So that is the sort of the highlights of the listing presentation. I find it takes, honestly, about 90 minutes sometimes, and can be longer if the house tour takes 50 of it. And I know it's going to take about 60 minutes to go through all this information, marketing plan, to really talk in detail about pre-inspection, staging, answer their questions. We talk about timing and what day to list, and then really get nitty-gritty into the comparable sales. But at the end of the evening, or the day when I've left, I want them to know hopefully that they like me, they trust me because I have the character to be liked. I'm good at what I do, I have that professional competency. And I think if you have character and competency and they know you care about them, they can trust you, and you're good at what they do, you will almost always be hired, even if other agents charge less, even if other agents have big teams or small teams or sell them on different dynamics. I think, again, most importantly, it's not what other agents are saying or doing. It's you and your connection with them and your competency and your willingness to serve them and demonstrating that. So I hope that's all helpful. There is so much we could talk about in regards to guiding sellers. But again, the most important things is you're prepared to meet with them and you have a plan in place to prepare their home. To have I think it's something dads will say, like, failing to plan is planning to fail, and I think that's correct. You cannot go into someone's home without an idea of what you're doing, what to do to their home. So I encourage you to really be thoughtfully considering how you guide the initial conversation, what you want to do for them in their home, and what will you do for them to serve them. How will you guide them, how will you care about them. All those things need to be said, but it comes with being prepared. So I hope that's helpful, and always happy to visit about this more. Thanks.